Hey, what's going on YouTube? Storm here with another discussion video talking about the another deck profile with Igknights. This is part of Clash Rebellion week where I cover decks that are new decks that are coming out in Clash Rebellions and basically or decks that have completely been revamped. Obviously, I covered Red Eyes yesterday. And I can also do some kind of Performa Mage Clownblade deck profile if you'd like to see that as well. Please let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see that profiled as well. Because I do have the deck, but I prefer to cover these other decks, because I feel like these are the card decks people want to hear about from this set. So today is Igknights. Obviously, I did cover Red Eyes yesterday. Igknights are, if you don't know what they are a group of Pendulum Warrior type monsters that are all vanillas, but they have basically destroy each other in the Pendulum Zone and search out another fire type warrior monster. So basically you can keep stacking your extra deck with monsters, just Pendulum Summon everything back. Everything in the deck that's a pretty key cog is searchable via Rhoda and Summoner's Art. And because they're all vanillas, you can play Rescue Rabbit. You can even actually use Rescue Hamster in a deck now, which is really cool, because I remember my friend telling me Rescue Hamster was a card that if Pendulums ever take off, it's going to become really expensive. Now, it's a super rare, and it's been reprinted twice, and it'll be reprinted again, so it may not be, what Rescue Rabbit was back in the day, but nevertheless, it's going to be a really good card if the more Pendulum support we get. So, as far as, obviously before I start the deck profile, like the other ones, I like to cover a few little techs that you can also run and split in place of some of these cards. Blue Flame Swordsman is pretty dang good in the deck. Like, he's absolutely just because he can bring the entire, you end up with a lot, because you exceed a ton, you end up with a lot of cards in the graveyard. So Blue Flame Swordsman fits pretty nice, especially because you can run, it works really well in tandem with this fire type warrior tuner monster named Rose Warrior of Revenge. I used to run this card as a tuner way back when, and it's actually really good in combination with Blue Flame Swordsman, because you can use this card to synchro summon Crimson Blader, and then Blue Flame Swordsman can bring back Crimson Blader when it dies. So it's a pretty nifty little combo you can do there. Other cards, with that obviously don't need explanation. If you want to turbo through the deck, Upstart Goblin is obviously you take 3 of these cards out, run 3. I believe Igknights have this reload card it's just like a magic mallet, except you get to draw +1, but you can't draw anything else. And it's searchable via the field spell, so I think this card is going to be really pretty decent. And the fact that it shuffles it's a vanilla, really, technically speaking. Like in Igknights, it's searchable via the field spell, but the fact that it's generic means it can pretty much be played in any Pendulum deck. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know if it was the greatest. As far as the big ones, you shouldn't be playing. I don't think I really need to talk about these big Igknight monsters. You shouldn't be playing them. I mean, you just need to stick to the lower level ones and you'll be fine. As far as what we're missing from this deck, we're missing the second level 6, which didn't come out in Clash, named Igknight Uzi. It's the main thing with Igknights that matters is their levels. So and when we get Derringer and Uzi, I might tweak the ratios a bit, but for now, since this is what we have in Clash, we deal with it. So last tech I want to talk a little bit about is this card named Extra Buck. I believe it comes out in Clash, not entirely positive. I think it did. I had to reread the set list again. But basically, this card reads each time. It's kind of like what is it called? Shard of Greed for It's a Shard of Greed for Pendulum decks. Basically, every time a card is added to your extra deck, which is Pendulums and Igknights, you can add a counter on this, and you can send this card with 3 spell counters to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. So it's a bit slow, but it's nevertheless a pretty dang good card. The reason I don't run it is it conflicts with Royal Decree, and I want to run Royal Decree. I feel like it's really good in this deck. I want to keep back row from happening. So I would say one weakness of this deck is effect negation, because I remember watching Jamie the Kid 00's deck profile, and I noticed he said why he couldn't play the deck well without Giant Hand, and I thought, okay, he's stupid, but then I did a backtrack and thought about it, and I said it actually makes sense, because in his particular Igknight deck, it's a turbo variant, so you can't really run effect negation. So you obviously don't need to spend that kind of money on Giant Hand, but there's cards like Fiendish Chain, Breakthrough Skill, and Effect Failure you can run in its place. if you so wish. But that's one, I will agree with that statement that that is one thing Igknights don't have built in the deck is effect negation, because usually they're very lenient on back row. You know, even this variant only runs 5 traps and 3 of them are decrees. So I will say that. And with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the deck profile. So first, 2 copies of Igknight Gallant. In my first Igknight deck before I kind of put some more tech cards in, I was running basically 3 of every Igknight, and you can basically get away with building Igknights that way because they're all vanillas. But the main thing main thing with Igknights is that the level matters because of what you're going to be exceeding into. So I run 2 copies of Gallant because the rank 6s aren't totally that important, but they're pretty nice. Having a nice, Utopia Beyond is a very underrated card, and Photon Strike Bouncer is not bad either, but the rank 6s isn't the greatest pool, so that's why there's only 2 in here. 3 copies of Igknight Margrave, Igknight Riot. Basically, what this card does is it's a level 5. It's like all the other Igknight cards. Destroy one of the Igknight cards in the Pendulum Stone. Add 1 Wire Warrior. Level is what really matters. And the rank 5 pool is not bad. Volcasaurus is pretty dang good. Zem Maya is good at popping back row or popping set cards, because if you have Decree out, your opponent might start setting monsters and getting defensive, and that's when Zem Maya gets that much better. And 3 copies of both the level 4s. I believe Templar is the ultra rare, so it's the one you're probably going to have to pony up a little more money for if you are going to build Igknights. It's a necessary 3 of, absolutely no question, because the level 4s are really important because you can go into Rong Neminiad and Excalibur, and those cards are really good at pushing damage, so it's one of the reasons they're in here. 2 copies of both the level 3s. The reason I only run 2 of each is because the level 3s are only really here so I can make Anganir and Alucard. Anganir is really good in combination with Photon Strike Bouncer. It's a pretty damn... Mechwhip Anganir and Bouncer together is a almost impossible board to break, because if you try to activate an effect, Bouncer will negate it. If you try to Regeki, Anganir will trigger. And you can ask one of my RC, one of my Twitch mods. It's a pretty dang soft lock. Outside of something like Metaphys Horus and using chain links properly, there's very little outs that could really have to that combo. So that's one of the reasons that level 3s are in here. They're not totally necessary. If you want to run more of the higher other levels, feel free to. So 2 copies of Elemental Hero Blazeman. Now Blazeman, the main reason he's in here is that he opens up first the dragons because they're all vanillas. And first the dragons is almost a win condition against some decks, because some decks just like Necros just don't run back row, and if they don't draw into their Regeki, this card is going to sit there and they pretty much can't get rid of it. So decks that are heavily reliant on monster effects for removal will not be able to get over this card, and the fact that it can't be destroyed by battle except with a normal monster is pretty dang nice. Another card I did test, and speaking of Poly, another card I did test was Fusion Substitute. What this card is, it's basically treated as polymerization, which means you can't run 3 copies of Fusion Substitute and 3 copies of Poly, because it still counts as Poly. So it's weird, but you can't run more than 3 copies of a card under a certain name. Because it's treated like that, Blazeman can search it. It's really nice because most of the time your fusion, or pretty much all the time, your fusion materials are on the board rather than in your hand, because you want them going back to the extra deck. And I really like the card because it allows me to recycle and draw an extra card from the graveyard. And if it's dead, really, I'll just set it, and my opponent will probably blind space it. It's actually a pretty decent card, very underrated, and it's pretty decent in Igknights. And then 3 copies of Royal Magical Library. We all wanted this card, banned, but unfortunately it didn't. I do think though, since I'm not running something like Upstart Goblin, Magical Library just makes sense. While it's legal, might as well take advantage. It's a pretty dang good card in this deck, and I feel like the card might get banned at some point, but might as well take advantage while it's legal at 3. 1 copy of Rescue Rabbit. Most of the time, I really like Rescue Rabbit because they're all vanillas. You can go, and it pretty much is a rank 3, rank 4, whatever you need when you need it. So it's pretty. It's kind of an obvious card. It's an instant Excalibur or Castell or 101, whatever you need. 1 copy of Rescue Hamster. Now, a lot of you guys probably saw this card in Next Challenges. You probably don't know. A lot of you might not know what it does. The Pendulum effect is you can banish this card from your Pendulum Zone and add 2 face-up Pendulum monsters, the same name, from your extra deck to your hand. So the basic thing with this is that it contribute the once per duel effect basically can add any 2 pendulum monsters from your deck to your hand. They have to have the same name, obviously, but that's great in Igknights because you're running a lot of cards that are the same name. So that's pretty dang powerful, but it's only once per duel. The normal summon effect is basically just like Rescue Rabbit, except you have to have a level 5 or lower pendulum monster in your extra deck, and you contribute it from the field when it's normal summon, and then special summon with the same name, but their effects are negated. But unlike Rescue Rabbit, they won't get banished. They'll get destroyed, which means they'll go back to the extra deck if you decide not to make an XYZ. So that's pretty nice. I've tested it. I feel like you could probably get away with bumping Rescue Hamster and Igknights up to 2 or possibly even 3. But the main reason you want to use it is the search effect that only once per duel. So the good news is it is a rank 4, which means level 4, which means it's good for rank 4 plays. 2 copies of and now we're getting all the monster lineup. It's pretty heavy, about 22 monsters now for the spells. 2 copies of Ignition Phoenix. This card is pretty underrated in my opinion. I know it's a lot of Ignite. I noticed Jamie's Ignite build did not run it, and I can understand why. But if you're running it's really good because it's just another search card, and the fact that you can normal if you open kind of a bricky hand, which isn't very often in Ignites. Ignites almost always have a playable hand. You can normal summon Phoenix, and then get to whatever else you need. So I will say that it's not totally necessary, but I really like it, especially when the Magic Mallet card I mentioned earlier, the Ignition Reload card comes out. You're probably going to want to run this card. You can run it at anywhere from 2 to 3. It tested fine at 3. 1 copy of Regeki is a staple, doesn't really need an explanation at this point. 2 copies of Space, like I've said in other deck profiles, it's an Aura Storm staple. I run 2 Space in everything. I find room for it, even though back row I think back row is going to get a lot more heavy in the coming format because and I think especially if Chicken Race becomes, and Towers Turbo become, problems, I think we're going to go back to main decking 3 spaces again. 3 copies of Reinforcement of the Army. It searches all low levels. It's run at 3. 3 copies of Summoning Art. Searches the high levels. Pretty much self-explanatory. I do only have 5 targets, and I know Aura's usually picky about ratios. So I feel like I could probably get away with bump this guy up to 3, but that won't be an issue when we get the other level monsters. 2 copies of Polymerization. I was testing Fusion Substitute as 1 Fusion Substitute as well, but I don't ever see myself making more than 2 fusions a game, so I don't feel like you need more than the 2 copies of Polymerization. Now, it's all the spells for the traps. 2 copies of Spiritual Fire Art Kurenai. You might not know what this card does because it's pretty dang old. I think the last time it was printed was the Fire King structure deck. It's been out of print for quite a while. So the effect is, it's like there's a spiritual card for, I think, every attribute, but this is the fire one. It says, tribute 1 fire monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. What I like about this card is Ignites have there's a lot of fire monsters in this deck, obvious reasons, and I like about Kurenai is it allows you to dodge back row, because, or dodge effect, negation, effect removal. It's kind of and I really like tributing off my bigger Ignite monsters and burning, and it pushes damage, it pushes OTKs, and it can be a game-ending card a lot of times because Ignites can put a lot of damage on the board. There'll be times where you might put all your Ignites on the board and you might be a little out of the range for an OTK. Kurenai will push that little bit of extra damage. 3 copies of Royal Decree. I will say Kurenai and Decree don't usually conflict with each other, but you could probably get away with cutting the Kurenais if you so wish. Decree is tested pretty well in testing. I really like the card because I don't like losing to back row. That's the main problem with Ignites as a Pendulum deck, is they Pendulum summon everything, and it gets bottomless. And that always makes me salty. So that's one of the reasons why I run Royal Decree in this deck, because I don't want to get my Pendulums bottomless. I don't want to get back row, get disrupted, and I don't want Satellars, resolving their 50 trap cards. So Royal Decree just made sense in this deck, when I was running through the testing, because I realized it was going to be really monster heavy, and that's usually what I do when I get down to about, 5 trap cards or something. Now for the extra deck, 2 copies of First the Dragons. You could probably get away with bumping it down to 1. Typically I don't usually make the second one, but, it's mostly just a just in case thing, and I can, so why not? Keep in mind you can only control one copy, but that's probably because it has such a dumb effect. You can't, fuse for another one. One copy of Nova Master because you can make it with Blazeman and any of the Igknights. It just made sense. I mean, it's a really great card. You run over a monster and destroy it. No matter where it goes, you get to draw a card. So it's different than cards like Crimson Blader that have to send the monster to the graveyard. Nova Master will net you that draw no matter where the monster goes. So it's really nice with all these Pendulum decks. It's really nice to have that Nova Master, have that draw. And then we're going to the XYZs for the rank 3s. One copy of Igknight, like I said, it keeps your monsters protected, and it keeps some of your bigger XYZs from getting wrecked by, Regeki or by back. One copy Ghost Trick Alucard, mostly to clear sets, to clear back row. It's the same reason one of the same reasons I run Zem Maya. It pops back row and clears off, set monsters. So I don't, especially if it's, because I notice there's a lot of decks that run monsters that need to be destroyed by battle, and Alucard just gets them out of the way, so you don't have to deal with them. Now for the rank 4s, one copy of Castel. Castel deals with problems, and it gets over a lot of it's a necessary evil when we have cards like El Shaddai Construct that always get their effects when they go to graveyard. So Castel's kind of a necessary evil. We have to run it. One copy of Excalibur. Excalibur is just really good in this deck. Obviously, they're all warriors, and being able to go up to 4K is pretty nice. Copy of Evil Storm Exciton Knight. It's a pendulum deck, so it's not totally necessary, but sometimes you'll be glad you have that Exciton when you're down and you're in a bad position. One copy of Silent number 101, Silent Honor Ark. As I've said in previous videos, the reason I still run it like 101 is there's a lot of monsters that have there's still a couple of obscure monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! That have leave the field effects. I'd rather have the 101 and be happy than not. You can always run the second Castel if you don't like Ark. The other thing I like about Ark is that it keeps monsters from going back to the extra deck, or my opponent can just make them again. There's some monsters obviously you don't want to Ark, like Construct, because they'll still get their effects. But it's the main reason. I just still like 101. I feel like it's still a really good card. Now for the rank 5s, there's only 2 here. There's one more rank 4. I'm going to talk a little bit about Wrong Dominiad. Obviously, this card is basically, a lot of people call this the Igknight win condition. The thing is, you only have, you do have more warriors in this build, but most of the time, it's pretty situational in my opinion to make it. You can make it first turn, and it does really hurt your opponent and slow them down for a turn or two. But you have to put other things on the board. You can't just put a Wrong Dominiad and let your opponent just it can put them a turn or two behind, but you still need to have other ways of killing your opponent. It is a partial win condition, but not in every case. One copy of number 61 Volcasaurus. This is one of the rank 5s. You blow up a monster, you can't attack directly, but you blow up a monster, can be game-ending damage. One copy of Zem Maya. Basically, if you don't know what this card does, it's a generic rank 5. You can detach and exceed material and pop 2 set cards on the field. So it's really nice at getting clearing off opponent's back row. It's because it says set cards, you can also pop set monsters, which is really, really nice. And it's just a really good card. And for the rank 2 of the rank 6s, one copy of number 39, Beyond the Hope. If you don't know what this card does, it's pretty powerful Utopia monsters. If this card is exceed summoned, your attack of all your opponent's monsters becomes 0. So basically, they can have the beefiest monsters in the world, and they suddenly become 0's attack. Bam! This card hits the field. The other effect, that's the main reason you run this card, is that you make this card, blow your opponents, continue pushing, and it pushes, and it's also a 3K beater, which is pretty insane for a generic rank 6. One copy of Photon Strike Bouncer. Card's pretty dang good. You could also run Gauntlet Launcher in this card's place, but the main reason is it's partially to help create, like I said about with Igknight, it's partially to combo with Igknight. It's a pretty decent card. And then for another rank 4, last one is one copy of Perform Mage, Trapeze Magician. You will not make this card very often, but the main reason is you're going to overlay 2 libraries to make it. The really cool combo I thought up when I was, testing Clownblade was you can make Trapeze Magician and then make Excalibur. Detach with Excalibur and then target Excalibur with the Trapeze Magician. That's 8k of damage right there, and that's game in a lot of situations. So, if you don't know what Trapeze Magician does, the first effect is that you don't take any damage less than equal to this card's attack. So basically, if this card attacks and your opponent cylinders, you will take no damage. The attack will still be negated, but you'll take no damage. However, if in the case of Chicken Race FTK, it probably won't negate Explosion for game. which is usually they're at about 3k or so. So if you know, if they're going to deal more than 3, unless they're going to deal say 3k damage, it won't protect you, but it will protect you from stuff like Magic Cylinder. If you're another one of your monsters gets rings, you won't take damage. It's a pretty decent card in that regard. And the main thing you care about, though, is that you can target one other face-up attack position monster on the field. It can make a second attack during the battle phase, but it gets destroyed at the end. So the basic point of this is that the main part of this is that you make this card on top of 2 magical libraries and target a big monster like Excalibur and just smash your opponent for game. It's a pretty easy to pull off combo, even though you won't always have multiple libraries just sitting there. It's a pretty, you might as well run Chippies Magician for the instances where it would happen. So anyway, guys, that comes to the end of the deck profile today. Really, and I always appreciate it when people watch my videos. Tune in on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you would like to see Clownblade profile, please let me know in the comment section down below. As always, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching. This is Storm signing out.